What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Bootleg Football Podcast, Week 5 Recap Edition. We are finally through this week after a rare Tuesday night game between the Titans and the Bills. If I remember correctly, the first Tuesday NFL game in 70 years. So it's
second, but close
it's been
enough.
that kind of season. Second in 70 years. It's been that kind of year. 2020 is wild, but almost as wild as all of the crazy blowouts we had in Week 5. Some maybe expected, some not so expected. So we got a lot of football to talk about, EJ. How you doing, buddy? And what are you drinking?
I'm good. I'm hanging in. It feels like we've had a full NFL week, and by that, it feels like we started on Thursday. Felt like not a 2-day gap until Sunday, and then we played Sunday and Monday and Tuesday, and now we're finally done with Week 5, so lots of football to talk about. I've seen multiple calls on Twitter for football every day of the week. I think people would be into that. I think it's nice to get a break a couple of days and not have live games,
be
but
exhausted.
I can see the appeal, but careful what you wish for, folks. But what am I drinking? I have one of the offerings from Boothbay Craft Brewery in Boothbay Harbor, Maine, and it is the Ken Brown Ale, and it is indeed a brown ale, and it is named after a guy named Ken Brown. It is a 16-ounce can, again from Boothbay, Maine. And I've had a couple of these. They're really nice. It's 5.6 ABV, so very sippable, delicious. Looking forward to it. What do you have to drink? We didn't talk about this, so this is going to be a surprise.
I got my tried and true Lagavulin 16 neat going for me tonight. Much higher ABV, clearly.
A little bit.
Yes.
I don't recommend you drink 16 ounces of that.
I mean, you can, but I can't guarantee you'll survive.
I can't. I'd make it through about 8 before I was done.
It's probably, I think, the quintessential Islay single malt scotch. Just heavy peat. You know, it's like you're drinking a fireplace, briny. It's very reflective of... That's what they call it, briny. You know,
No, I was laughing at the fireplace, not the briny.
But it is an acquired taste. I will say that. I happen to absolutely love Islay scotches. Many people, even people who like scotch, do not like Islay's because they are, let's just say, harsh. But I'm a big Islay fan. Lagavulin 16 is one of my favorite, right up there with probably the Brooklyn Port Charlotte and Lefroy 10 are probably kind of like my holy trinity for Islay scotches. And also my wife's least favorite alcohol on the face of the planet. But
more
with
for
that
you.
being said, yeah, more for me, clearly. But with that being said, we want to get into the point after where we talk about some things that we did not get to talk about in last week's show. Maybe just because we didn't see the games at the time or we just didn't have time to hit on it. And a few points we want to get to for this week's point after. Some of them applying again to this week. Cooper Kupp just keeps showing up, making huge plays, justifying that contract. Believe it or not, he's tied right now for his career high in yards per game at about 72.6. So he's on track for another 1,100-yard season, probably somewhere between 8 to 11 touchdowns again. I mean, he is one of the most quote-unquote automatic receivers in the league right now in terms of consistency. Won't put up elite numbers every week, but you kind of look at him at the end of Week 17, you're like, damn, he did it again. He got another 1,000 yards, high catch rate, clutch on third down. He's one of the game's most underrated players.
Yeah, it's amazing for a guy that gets as much press and plays in as big a market as he does, but, he gets overshadowed by the other guy every week. A couple of weeks ago was Tyler Higbee with, 3 touchdowns, and we talked about Robert Woods last week as being a good all-around football player. He had another big play this week, but Cooper Kupp is always there, and he's one of those guys that's always been there. Through college, he was exactly the same way. He was hyper-productive, and a lot of people said, it won't translate, right? He's coming up almost 2 levels. Coming from a smaller college in Washington, that's not gonna make it on the NFL stage, and he's just doing the same thing he always does. And I realized we hadn't talked about him yet this year, again, probably because we just sort of expect him to be doing those kind of things, but yet here he is, like you said, on pace to do it again. So worth the mention. And another guy that has not been that consistent but has made a play, or it feels like to me he's made a play every week, and he made another big one this week, is Kyler Fackrell. Currently on the Giants this week, he had a huge play for an interception return, ended up punching it into the end zone. He had a big sack last week versus the Rams against Whitworth to end a drive. It was a big part of keeping that game close for as long as it was. He's not a player that I loved coming out when he was drafted. Had a little bit of a flash with the Packers. Had some big plays, got some Packer fans really excited, and then sort of settled back into sort of more what I thought was his level as a player. But boy, the Giants have not had a great season, but Kyler Fackrell has made at least one big play every week, it feels like.
Yeah, last week it was, that big third down sack on Jared Goff, which, again, that game, I was as surprised as anybody that game was even close in the fourth quarter, but ending a drive and kind of stealing a possession for your team is one of those reasons why. It was 3rd and 5. He beat Andrew Whitworth. Didn't beat him on the first move, but it's a hustle play, and we'll talk about a couple other hustle rushers later in this show, but just kind of sticking with it, dragging him down, forcing a punt, scoring on the ensuing drive. Those are the kind of plays that even if you're a vastly inferior team like the Giants, it'll keep you in it. This week it was the pick six, giving them 17-3 lead against Dallas, even though they ultimately lost that game. Again, the Giants are in some of these games with much better teams, partially because of what Fackrell's doing. So he's not a great player, but he's having a good year, and I think that kudos to him for that. Another guy who I think is kind of under the radar, having a really good year, almost like a James White type guy, is Myles Gaskin down in Miami, where, again, just like James White, not going to put up crazy numbers every week, but seems like every single touch he gets is going for a first down. He's a third down safety blanket in the pass game. He'll bust off a couple nice runs a game. Never going to get a whole lot of touches, but I remember talking to my buddy Travis Wingfield, who's over in Dolphins media in Miami. He works for the team, and he was sending me a message during training camp, and he's like, "Dude, you gotta draft Myles Gaskin. Like that's the guy here for them. Like when a play absolutely needs to be made." And so far, Travis has been right. Gaskin every single week shows up with at least 2 or 3 big plays to keep this offense on the field.
Yeah, not flashy, but effective is the note that I have, and that's almost the exact same note I had when I scouted him coming out of college, and I thought, hey, here's a guy you're going to be able to get late. He's never going to go high, late round, possibly UDFA, but he's going to be one of those guys that when he gets his touches, the notes I have for him say pro. He understood. He had a ton of touches in college, was very productive and did the same thing. Was productive with his touches, helped his team move the chains, was a productive part of the offense. You look down, Myles Gaskin is not going to have, 130, 140 yards for the Dolphins. He's going to have 50 yards rushing, like you said, 20 receiving, 3 receptions, 2 of those for first downs. This week he got a touchdown. I think James White is a very apt comparison, and he's just doing it. He's not going to be in that top tier. We talk about those high-end running backs that got all the contracts. We talk about Kamara, we talk about Cook, we talk about CMC, all those guys. He's not that guy. He's that glue guy on offense that's going to do what needs to be done. He's going to be a pro about it. He's going to be super consistent, and I think those guys deserve a mention too, because he's helping power that Miami offense.
And when it's 3rd and 7, he's going to be on the field.
Yeah, yeah, he is. A guy that, we both talked about, you at length, I brought him up in some key situations, is Daniel Jones. And Daniel Jones is a guy that can look really, really good, but has sort of 2 issues that combined or hybridized to make a really nasty situation for an NFL quarterback, and that's his inability to feel the rush coming on a regular basis and his propensity to put the ball on the ground when he gets hit. I think there was a stat that came up and said that Daniel Jones has had a fumble in 13 of his last 16 games, and that was a couple of weeks ago. And that just stunned me that a guy was dropping the ball once a game, pretty much on average. You can't have that. Yeah, the Giants got some of those back. They didn't lose them all, but you just can't have that. And combined with his sort of completely tone-deaf rush radar that just doesn't pick it up coming around the corner, he gets hit a lot. And often when he gets hit like that, he puts the ball on the ground. And it's starting to feel to me like that combination of issues is just more than he's going to be able to overcome, because he would need one to get away from the other. If he didn't have both, it feels like he could mitigate one and or the other, but he has both. And I don't think it's too early. It feels like the Giants don't have their guy, and people will be up in arms and say, oh, it's, he's a young player, you can't give up on him, all this. Well, there's something to be said too about having a quick trigger and saying, nope, we don't have our quarterback, right? The Cardinals did it and they ended up getting Kyler, right? And I didn't think that was a great move at the time because I liked Josh Rosen, but they believed in Kyler and saw what they had, and they didn't, it was the next year. They were like, nope, we're going to say we didn't get it. We're going to keep going until we get it, because in the NFL, you have to keep going till you get a quarterback. It's the same thing. The Chargers just figured it out,
and
right?
See, Giants fans are going to be real upset with you.
I know.
But here's the thing. As soon as they're in position to get Trevor Lawrence, they're going to be like, well, we have to get Trevor. Like, the fans are always going to back their guy.
Yep.
But I think as this season goes on, even Giants fans are going to realize that this is not winning football. This is not sustainable. We cannot have a quarterback that's literally on pace to turn the ball over more than frickin' Jameis Winston. Like, you can't win like this. And if they get in position to draft Trevor Lawrence, maybe Justin Fields, yeah, you got to do that. Because guess what? If the Giants are that bad, David Gettleman's going to be fired anyway. So they're going to bring in a new general manager anyway. And there's no way a general manager who's in position to draft Lawrence or Fields or maybe even Trey Lance is going to choose Daniel Jones and stake his career on that. Like, no way. Like, I would be surprised, unless the Giants somehow turn this season around, which they probably won't. I would be surprised if Daniel Jones is the starting quarterback next year for the Giants, because even if he does have a lot of potential, there's no way the next general manager is going to gamble on that potential being fulfilled when he has a shot at potentially two better prospects in the draft. Like, this is not winning football, and this has not been winning football now for a full year and a half, when you see all these other young quarterbacks that are, hitting their stride within 3 or 4 starts, and we're still not seeing that with Daniel Jones. You were just about to mention Justin Herbert. His pressure rate is just as good, if not worse, than Jones, but he's one of the best quarterbacks under pressure in the league right now. So I don't want to hear an excuse about having a bad offensive line. The Chargers' offensive line is terrible, and Justin Herbert's making it work. Daniel Jones is not. Some guys just don't have it. And I guarantee you that for as many Giants fans that are going to be upset at us for hearing that, when they have a shot to draft Trevor Lawrence next season, they're going to be on the Trevor Lawrence train, because they know deep down inside this is not working.
Yeah, and it just means that your team has to be perfect, right? If Daniel Jones is going to continue to play like that, he's going to have the occasional hot game. He definitely has some beautiful highlights, right? When Daniel Jones gets a clean pocket, he can make some beautiful throws. That's the case. But again, everything has to be perfect. If he's getting pressure, he doesn't see it. Yes, he can scramble for the occasional nice first down, but in general, everything has to be perfect for the Giants to have a chance to win, and that's not winning football in the NFL, because it rarely goes that way. So, yeah, a little salve for the Giants fans after we sort of talk nasty about Daniel Jones is that Darius Slayton is showing up big for the Giants this season. He had a good year last year. We didn't mention his name on the preview episode we did this summer. We took a bunch of heat about that. How could you not mention Darius Slayton? And look, that's what the point after's for. So this is mea culpa and make up for the summer. You were absolutely right then. And if we weren't saying anything about him now, you'd be absolutely right in raking us over the coals for that too. Because Darius Slayton, like his defensive teammate, Kyler Fackrell, right, is making big plays for the Giants and showing up on a regular basis. The Giants are, as we just said, kind of suffering through a bit of a lost season, but Slayton has not quit. On the contrary, he's out there making flash plays. If you're paying attention, Darius Slayton's putting in work, and it's showing up.
Yeah, and that's the thing is there's pieces here for the Giants. You know, you've got Slayton. You've got, hopefully, Barkley will come back healthy. You know, you and I are both big fans of Sterling Shepard. Like, this is not a completely talent devoid offense. You know, obviously Andrew Thomas has been disappointing as a left tackle so far, but we've seen some young tackles struggle their rookie years and then turn it around.
He's not disappointing as a tight end, though.
That's true. And that, you see, here's what's funny is there was video of him practicing at receiver, and the Cowboys somehow still didn't see this coming. Like, it was literally like trending on Twitter, Andrew Thomas catching passes at practice. Like, oh, that didn't set off any alarm bells? Really, guys? God, Cowboys defense is so bad.
No, but they've got a couple tackles. They've got a couple receivers, right? They got a running back, hopefully again. Saquon comes back, you know, strong. They need a quarterback, but they're going to be in position to get one and take a shot on a guy that they like. The defense has some players. Do they need more players? They do. But again, like you said, the cupboard is not empty. It just needs to be reorganized, and you got to get a quarterback. Like, if you don't have a quarterback, you've got to do whatever you can until you get one. And that means not stopping with, oh, I got this, you know, veteran holdover that's going to win me 6 or 8 games. I guess that's good enough. No, you keep going until you get the guy that cracks through and is going to be your starting quarterback for a while. The guy you know, will lay down and die to give a second contract to because he is going nowhere. That guy, you need that guy. And Daniel Jones is not that guy for the Giants.
No, not at all. Now, transitioning to a slightly happier topic, we do have a new segment on Bootleg called the Bootleg Shot of the Week, because, of course, we need to have more alcohol in this show to get through it. And
it goes without saying in 2020, right? It's just find another way to squeak in an extra shot of alcohol.
And in the Shot of the Week, as we kind of go through these game recaps one by one, we'll nominate a big and clean hit as we talk through each one of these games and nominate it for the Shot of the Week. And then we're going to have you guys vote on it, the best hit or the best shot. And then we will celebrate the winner the following episode with a little shot of, what do you want to do, like Cazadores?
We can do whatever. I think we can pick our own shots, but a little shot to get the podcast started seemed like a good idea. And, you know, I think there's been a lot of downplaying of hitting in the NFL. And, you know, we're going to keep it clean. We're certainly not going to try and nominate anything where somebody gets hurt. That's part of the game. It's really unfortunate. We're looking at the guys that are trying to do it the right way. They're not out there headhunting. They're not out there twisting people's legs. We're not talking about those hits. We're talking about lined a guy up, dropped your head, hit him with your shoulder in the midsection, and just drilled him. And those shots are still out there. Guys are laying it out for their teams. So we're going to nominate them. We'll see how it goes. Like anything, we'll try it out. If you guys like it, we'll keep doing it. If you don't, we might keep doing it because we like the shots, but we're going to give
that's
it a
really
shot.
the motivation here is we just want
to take exactly shots. So we'll highlight these hits as we go through the games and say if there was a hit in there and which one it was. And look, videos everywhere these days. It's pretty easy to look it up and see what we're talking about. Brett might even be able to tag some of that as we post the podcast or give links or tell people where to find those. But if you can't, you can just Google it these days. You'll find it. It's on Twitter. And, you know, it'll be fun. It's something else to do in the 2020 season. And it, you know, gives a little love and limelight to the defenders, right? And who knows? We might have an offensive tackle on an interception return get nominated. I wouldn't doubt that. But generally, it gives some love to the defenders who are out there working hard and taking their shots.
Yeah, so I'll put that poll on my Twitter, and then I'll link that in the comments on the YouTube channel for you guys to find that and vote on it. But with that being said, let's get into these games. First one we really want to highlight is the Giants-Cowboys game, and we got to talk first about Dak Prescott. It's just an absolutely soul-crushing injury, not just for Cowboys fans, but for really any fan of football. You know, he's one of the best people, I would say, in the league. And I think it's important to kind of separate criticism of a player, which, you know, everybody's been critical of Dak before for one reason or another. I myself have been critical of him for, you know, certain games or decisions or whatever myself, but I will never, ever criticize Dak Prescott as a person, as a leader, as a man, as a human being, because he is truly one of the great people in football. And it just breaks my heart that, he bet on himself to get a big contract, and then, I don't even know where his contract situation stands now. I hope that kind of Jerry does right by him and gives him a deal that, will give him some financial security, because who knows what his future is going to be. We think he can come back healthy, but I don't really know what the prognosis is. They're saying like maybe 6 months, but that puts you right in line with the draft and free agency. Who knows at this point. So it breaks my heart to see him laying it all out there for his team, and then just having absolutely rotten luck, and not to mention everything that's happened in his personal life this year, all the awareness that he's been doing for mental health and everything. Like, he's such a good human being, and it makes me sick.
Yeah, I think it was pretty easy to tell, just as a reflection of character, how many people from around the league, how many of his contemporaries, his colleagues, his competitors came out and said exactly the same thing. Heart goes out to Dak. Such a bad situation for Dak. You saw Jason Garrett, his coach, now with the Giants, on the field, come running over immediately. Like, there was no hesitation. This is not a guy, a human being that people are divided on. People can be divided on the player. People can be divided on the contract. But in terms of who he is as a person and the respect that he commands around the league, it's really obvious on the field. All of his teammates, all over the Twitter sphere, right? Immediately, just overwhelming and positive support. It's a tough situation. It's going to be, it's going to be a lot of work to get it repaired. It's going to be a lot of work to get it rehabbed. He's got a long road ahead of him, and uncertainty, as you said, is the biggest word being introduced into the process, right? He didn't have a contract. We hope that things go well for him. But the other thing that's just a bummer, as you said, sort of for all football fans, is Dak was playing at an extremely high level. The
Yes.
defense in Dallas was playing at an extremely low level. But if you look at what Dak has put up specifically over the last 3 weeks, he was on tear. He was on a hot streak that is impossible to ignore. We brought it up, that he was in a groove a couple of weeks ago, that he is playing some of the best football of his career. And you just love to see guys doing that, right? Guys maximizing their talent at the top of their game, just super high output. And he was there. He was in a groove. You can use whatever phrase you want to describe it. He was firing on all cylinders. And to have this happen on top of the contract situation and the person he is and everything else, it's just, it's just yuck.
I made a video just before the season about his contract, and what's the value of a good quarterback, what's the value of a great quarterback, what's the line of demarcation for where, in terms of like making the playoff and winning Super Bowls, like where's the line for where it's worth it to pay a guy in top 10 money. And I was posing the question at the end, like up until this season, I felt like he was a good quarterback, but I didn't feel like he was in, past that line of demarcation where you could pay him literally anything and he would drag your team to the playoffs. Guys like Russell, guys like Mahomes, the Andrew Lucks, where it's like they're worth whatever you want to write on the check. This season, he became that guy. This was, in my opinion, his coming out party. Even though he had put up numbers before, this was his coming out party as a quarterback of like, no, I am the only reason this team even has a chance. And all of their losses were not his fault. In fact, the team put him in a hole and he dug them out of it. And I think he had taken such a huge step forward into shutting my ass up and becoming the quarterback that is deserving of that kind of money. And that can absolutely carry a roster regardless of who's on it to consistent playoff berths. And that's part of the reason why it hurts is that he was there. he earned it. He was finally at that level where I think there was no doubt that, even for people like me, there was no doubt that he deserved that money. And then to see it kind of rip from him, it just sucks. Like I couldn't even pay attention to the games the rest of the day, like at least until like halfway through the Seahawks game. Like I was numb just because I saw his life change right there, and it just broke my heart.
Yeah, it's incredibly rugged because you're right. He had ascended, right? There were always those people that said, oh, this number or that number, or he's better here than other quarterbacks or whatever else. This year, they just all the questions that would get thrown up in response to those arguments, much like yours, they were legitimate. It was a legitimate argument before, and you could pick and choose what you thought was important. This year, it didn't really matter what you thought was important. He was doing it all and looking really good doing it. It wasn't friendly bounces. It wasn't anything else. This was a guy in control with a ton of weapons, using them sort of equally and universally and just tossing up points practically at will. Like you said, this was a different Dak. And, as a football fan, look, I'm not a Cowboys fan. I like Dak. I liked him coming out. He's ascended to a position that I think was higher than even I had as sort of his ceiling. He's broken through that ceiling, certainly this year. And it's just, as a football fan, it sucks, right? Because that's what you want to see as a football fan. That's what we all want to see, is people getting the most out of their talent and just putting on a tremendous show. And Dak was doing that, and now we don't get to see it anymore. And obviously the personal implications for him are first, and they're terrible. And, way, way, way down the list is us as fans getting robbed of a guy, operating at the highest level that we don't get to see anymore. And there have been so many of those guys this year, and Dak just hurts especially much because of everything else on top of that. So moving on with the rest of the game, CeeDee Lamb, we got to talk about him. He's coming on. He's at about 3 weeks in a row. Some massive catches this week. Obviously talented wide receiver coming out in what was the best wide receiver draft in easily 20 years, possibly ever, when seriously. It's all said and done. And he was a top 3 guy in that class, no matter how you sliced it. There were people that had other folks as wide receiver 1, but I don't think I saw anybody that had CeeDee Lamb lower than 3rd. And they shouldn't have, because he was incredibly talented. And here he is in a loaded wide receiver room. You got Cooper and Gallup, who both probably could be an alpha on at least about 2/3 of the teams in the NFL. They're all in the same room, and here comes the rookie, and he's playing at or above their level, which is hard to imagine, but we were talking about this before the show, how they've all sort of raised their level. Sometimes guys will back down from that challenge or shy away or get jealous of other people's touches or whatever else. It doesn't seem like that at all in Dallas, especially with Dak pulling the trigger. All these guys were rising. Cooper's playing as well or better as I've seen him in recent seasons, and he's played pretty well in recent seasons. He's played really well, and he was elevating too. Gallup took over the last couple minutes of the game. Now CeeDee Lamb is surging and really showing, again, all the talent he had in college. It's just a great room, but you cannot deny that CeeDee Lamb is like rising. He's hitting that point where, the rookie takes the training pants off and stands up and says, no, I'm a big part of this offense and I'm going to be a reason we win, not just contribute. And he's doing it.
You know what it reminds me of? The 2000 Miami Hurricanes, where their top 2 receivers were Reggie Wayne and Santana Moss. And they were, and there's been a couple 30 for 30s on these Canes teams. And, Reggie will tell you they were scared to death of getting hurt because there was this young freshman that came in that year named Andre Johnson that was going to take all of their jobs if they missed a single snap. And CeeDee Lamb strikes the same kind of thing. Amari's great, Gallup's great. CeeDee comes in and he's 5th in the league in receiving yards as a rookie, as a number 3. Well, maybe former number 3 on this team. Like, if anybody gets hurt, they're losing their job because this kid is just ridiculous.
And that's where the scary thing about that is that's with a pretty quiet first 2 weeks. Like, he had some catches,
Yeah.
but really in the last 3 games, like, he's come on. And so it's largely in the last 3 games that he's vaulted up to 5th as a rookie. And look, we talk about talented wide receivers on this show every week. You can't throw a stick in this league and not hit a bunch of talented wide receivers. To be 5th as a rookie after I don't want to say a slow start, but a cool start, that's nuts.
Yeah, he's beyond special, and it kind of is. It's another. I don't want to say an indictment on the Eagles, but you see all these rookie receivers having a lot of success, and we know that the Eagles had an opportunity at least to trade up to potentially secure CeeDee Lamb and just couldn't get the deal done. They ended up taking Jalen Reagor, who's unfortunately, been dealing with injuries so far, but you're seeing Claypool go off. You're seeing Gabe Davis go off. You're obviously seeing CD go off. And, Ruggs went off. Like, all these rookie receivers are absolutely lighting the league on fire. Justin Jefferson. And then the one that the Eagles took is like the only highly drafted rookie receiver that's just not getting any production. It's got to be. If I was an Eagles fan, I'd just be pulling my hair out at this point, especially seeing the one that they wanted more than anybody, CD, lighting it up for, their arch rival. Ooh, that's rough.
Yeah, that part hurts an extra lot, right? When he goes to your division rival and you've got to watch him produce against you. And it happens every year. I mean, teams' draft boards move around, but yeah, that's not great. Another takeaway from this Giants-Cowboys game, having an experienced backup matters. And not all teams do. And, the Cowboys were able to come in. Again, the Giants are struggling, but on any given Sunday, any team can beat any other team in the NFL. We see it every year. We see it every week, quite frankly. And having an experienced backup quarterback is the difference between probably a couple of wins a game in this league. Hopefully your starter doesn't go down for, a long stretch where you've got to count on that backup for 6 or 8 weeks. It happens. And yeah, some guys rise to the occasion and pick up a nice contract to go be a starter elsewhere. But boy, to be able to get a guy like Andy Dalton that's got 1 billion snaps under his belt and get him for very little money late in the process to come in. And again, ideally he doesn't touch the ball all year. Like Dak goes on to a, MVP type consideration and he never touches the ball. But boy, when you need him, and they needed him on Sunday, and having an experienced guy back there, nobody more experienced really than Dalton as a backup quarterback, that is a big deal in this league.
Yeah, and we like to talk up, the 2 big catches that Gallup made in the end to kind of set up the game winner, but the balls that he was catching weren't half bad either. They were very well placed. Andy came in, cold off the bench, threw some dimes, got this team in scoring position. Like, it wasn't just the receivers doing all the work. Like, they got to catch, good passes. And I think it just goes to show, to your point, that having a veteran that can come in and not completely soil himself under pressure, in a division game, again, cold off the bench, like it's an incredibly valuable asset. They were extremely lucky that they were able to sign him for dirt cheap. I think he's only getting like a million this year, something like that. It's at least below 2 million. I know that. So again, just incredible value to have potentially a season-saving backup quarterback, because Andy Dalton, I think, is at least he's average in my opinion. Like, I understand why they took Burrow, because you never want to strive for averageness at the quarterback position, but if your franchise quarterback goes down with an injury, you definitely don't want to have a below average quarterback backing him up. So again, very savvy signing that at the time it was a great value just because of how cheap he was, and now it's definitely a great value just because they're actually having to get some good play out of him. So credit to the Cowboys front office for pulling that one off. And I do want to say Tony Pollard, for as few touches as he gets, even though the Cowboys backfield is just getting fewer touches overall this season, but for as few touches as Pollard gets, he's another guy where, again, if the starter goes down for Dallas, God forbid Zeke gets hurt too. They've had enough injuries as it is. But if Zeke gets hurt too, I think they'd be totally fine with Tony Pollard as their starting running back, because he's really damn good.
They'd skip a lot less beats than people think they would. I'm not saying Zeke is bad farthest thing from it. Zeke's a very talented runner. Tony Pollard is so good. He's so patient and powerful. You see real skill and savvy in his touches. Again, there aren't that many of them, but he makes quality yards on the touches he gets. And being Zeke's understudy means he doesn't get a lot of attention that he probably deserves. But if for some, again, terrible reason, he ends up in the spotlight, Dallas is going to be in good hands in the running game. Tony Pollard is ridiculously talented. So we just wanted to throw that note in there. Moving on to the Eagles-Steelers. Well, hello, Chase Claypool. Have a day. So Chase Claypool, if you are a bootleg listener, longtime bootleg listener, if that's the case, considering we've only been going for about 3/4 of a year, we talked him up seriously at the Senior Bowl. I saw this guy at weigh-ins and I thought, holy crap, he's a lot bigger than I thought he was. And I spawned this theory that he should be the next dominant move tight end in the league because he was easily big enough to overwhelm nickel corners and even small linebackers. And we hadn't really seen him run. We had tape on him, but, we knew that he was physically gifted and he would be a matchup nightmare as a move tight end. So I started pushing this theory. He went out in practice, blew up all the defensive backs regularly, and started to generate a legitimate, Mobile buzz, right? The Senior Bowl, hey, this guy might be the guy that we're not talking about in this wide receiver class that could really make some noise. Well, he slims down a little bit. He goes to the combine. He absolutely destroys it. He puts up Megatron-like numbers, completely sealed his fate as a wide receiver because wide receivers get paid more than tight ends, so he will absolutely take the wide receiver designation. Steelers happily pick him up, keep him outside, start running him on deep routes. He's had a couple of really splash plays over the last couple of weeks, and then this week just explodes, goes off for 4 TDs, 3 receiving, 1 rushing, and there's nothing but more good stuff on the way for him. He is dominant.
And I distinctly remember, when you and I were eating ribs after the second day of practice at the Senior Bowl, and we were just sitting there and we were trying to remember if anybody had a pass breakup against Claypool in the first 2 days. And I don't think anybody did. He was just absolutely murdering dudes with size, with physicality. He's a good route runner, but part of the reason that makes him such a good route runner is that he understands that he is so much more powerful than every DB on the field. And he could just toss them all over the place, and he really uses that size and physicality to his advantage, and obviously the speed on top of it. He's a unique mismatch nightmare. As a big slot receiver, you could put him on the boundary, obviously. I wouldn't even be surprised if at some point they get him involved in the run game, on sweeps and stuff like that. He's a unique specimen at the receiver position. And I don't know what the hell Philly was doing trying to get him matched up with Nate Gary in a match zone coverage where he's supposed to carry him down the middle. But guess what? That ain't going to work.
Not even close.
You'd think after 4 quarters of that they would figure out, Rodney McLeod would figure out hey, I should probably help out Nate Gary and not take the number 2 here when I also have a boundary corner that's sinking underneath the deep out. I should probably help my linebacker. No, they just let him go, and he scored his 4th touchdown that ended up winning the game. So, again, unique mismatch nightmare is Chase Claypool. And in this offense, Big Ben, we kind of look at him now as a grizzled old point guard where, he's not going to be the same playmaker he used to be in terms of breaking tackles and, kind of running around and making plays off schedule with his arm and his legs like he used to, but he can sit in the pocket and just distribute every single week. There's going to be a new guy, whether it's Deontay, whether it's Juju, whether it's Claypool this week. Getting the tight ends and the running backs involved. He's at that stage now where he's just gonna sit there and throw darts. And when you look at this Steelers skill position lineup, other than maybe dominant, having a dominant player at running back, they're pretty loaded at pass catchers, and they're pretty loaded at offensive line. I think this whole approach can absolutely work.
Yeah, it's perfect for him. Mina Kimes brought this point up on Twitter that Big Ben is that guy. He's not going to take, she was comparing him to a basketball player and said he's not going to take the three, right? He's just going to distribute and dish and take the open shot when he gets it. And it's really perfect for where he's at, because if you as a coaching staff or a team are leaning on Big Ben and saying, hey, be that guy you were in year 5 and year 6 in the league and come in and, throw bombs and again, shove off rushers like you have for the last decade plus, that's not going to work anymore. You have to adapt. And, Ben, to his credit, seems happy with it. And who wouldn't be? They're throwing up a ton of points. They've surrounded him with a ton of talent. He certainly can't argue as a late-stage quarterback that, the team's not supporting him. Like, again, the Steelers lineup that you pointed out, Connor's solid at running back. He ended up scoring and jawing. James Conner might be nominated for Trash Talker of the Week. He was going after the Eagles, but Ben's got a lot of targets. Everywhere he turns on that field, he's got speed and skill. And again, he's not getting thrashed like, his division rival, Joe Burrow. He's not getting hit on pretty much every single drop back. So it's a good place for him to be in, and I'd be smiling too if I was him.
Yeah, and my final point for this game is the Eagles got a big problem in their secondary. I'm not really sure why Kayvon Wallace isn't playing yet, but other than Rodney McLeod, and even McLeod, like I said, he's been making some mental mistakes here and there. Like, they're not getting good enough safety play, and probably outside of Darius Slay, like, they haven't really got any good corner play either. It's been Darius Slay, and then on occasion Rodney McLeod, and then nobody else is doing anything.
Yeah. Crayvon LeBlanc a little bit in the slot, and he's been more of a sort of rover and Johnny on the spot, picking up fumbles and forcing big hits. But look, in the modern NFL, that's not enough, right? You can't have 1.5 or 2 guys in the secondary. You need 3 good corners and at least 1 good safety, like 1 really good safety. And then there's probably a guy you're not paying as much that's more of the glue guy or the hitter, or maybe you stuff him near the line in a box safety. Depends on your defensive alignment. The Eagles have a dearth of talent in the secondary right now besides Slay, and they're going to see nothing but 4 verts for the rest of the season, right? Teams are just going to put pressure on those safeties. They're going to be like, yeah, go ahead, try and shut us down. We're going to put you in places, in situations where you have to decide, because we don't think you're deciding very well right now. And it's just like a rookie offensive tackle getting blitz after blitz where he's got to make a pick or pick up a stunt because they've seen he can't do it. And until you can prove it, that you can do it, that you can stop it, that you can keep the easy yards from happening in the NFL, teams are just going to do it to you over and over and over again. So I think the Eagles, it hasn't been pretty so far. Buckle up, Eagles fans. It might get rougher as the season goes on because people are absolutely going to try and turn the knife.
And by the way, their linebacker, Nathan Gary, is still somehow starting despite already giving up 267 yards and 4 touchdowns. He has 0 pass breakups despite getting targeted over 20 times in 5 days. Like, it's not just the safeties, it's the linebackers too.
It reminds me of that GIF. Not great, Bob.
Not great, Bob. It's rough. Like they don't have all their true playmakers are in the defensive line, and that's about it. And it's everybody else is just not pulling their weight. It's bad. But anywho, maybe it will get better eventually, he said facetiously.
Hopefully is.
I mean, they're in a bad division, so it's not like they're out of it.
Yeah, it's certainly better if they were like in the NFC West or something, where they just were facing high octane offenses every week. That would be much worse than where they sit divisionally. But moving out west, or at least partially, the Chargers Saints. Got to talk about this game. Sorry, Tyrod. I like Tyrod Taylor. I am a Tyrod Taylor lover, defender, whatever you want to call it. Stan, like I think Tyrod's a good quarterback. You're not getting your old job back. I realize that the circumstance that you lost the job under was crappy. There is no way short of an injury to Justin Herbert you're going to see the field again, because Justin Herbert is way better, way quicker than almost anyone anticipated. He was, a guy with a lot of talent, but you posted something on Twitter this week about your assessment of Herbert. You did a film room on him during the draft cycle saying, hey, my mistake might have been, giving a little bit more credit to the scheme and a little bit less credit to the player. That Oregon's sort of horizontal scheme sort of masked his true ability that we're seeing now, which are these gorgeous deep balls in a vertical offense, because he is throwing an amazing deep ball, just a beautiful deep ball. I'd say he's already one of the top 3 to 5 deep ball throwers in the league. And the thing that stands out to me the most about his deep ball is that guys don't have to stop. He is not bringing his receivers back to to bring the defensive back into play. The defensive back has nothing to do with it on these Herbert throws, right? It's 4 yards over their head and a yard or two out in front of the receiver. They just lay their hands out and keep running. They're like, he's taking the defensive backs completely out of the equation. And so few quarterbacks actually do that. I'd say that, Russ throws a great deep ball. We see Aaron Rodgers throw a really good deep ball. Obviously, Mahomes throws a good deep ball. And then guys like Ryan Tannehill are out there that, throw a very pretty deep ball, but it doesn't do it as often in the Titans offense. So he's right up there with being able to just air it out. I said last week that, somewhere that Eric Coryell is just, spinning in happiness watching the Chargers light it up like they're an old AFL team again. And Herbert is just powering that charge right now, and he's not giving up that spot anytime soon, nor should he.
No, he's looked fantastic, and it's a shock to the system for me because he doesn't look like he did in college. Like, I will always, call a spade a spade. I'll say what I think. Justin Herbert looks great now. He didn't look great last year, and I think we need to credit him for obviously putting in the work to get better. We also need to credit Pep Hamilton for playing to his strengths and emphasizing a vertical game. But when you look at Oregon, like he had just shy of 67% completions, which is good. But he also threw more screens at a higher rate than literally any NFL quarterback ever, like in the history of the sport. Like nobody ever threw as many screens as he did. So again, the completion percentage was a little bit inflated. His on-target accuracy percentage was pretty low. When they did go deep, most of the time it was off like pump and goes, off like fake screens. So everybody was wide open. There wasn't a whole lot of challenge to the vertical game. Like he didn't have to make a whole lot of crazy vertical throws into tight windows like he's doing now. Like he looked like a different quarterback, and then all of a sudden he shows up in the NFL. And he looks like a whole new man. Like it's wild. Like I have not seen, like even Jeff Schwartz, who's a former Duck and an Oregon diehard, even he said he had never seen this in Herbert, and that his development in such a short amount of time is unprecedented. So I think 2 things can be true. 1, Justin Herbert was an okay prospect, and it was really more about traits than production. And I think the other thing that can be true is that he's a great NFL quarterback. I think that those are not mutually exclusive. And so I just want to give a golf clap to him, for developing and putting in the work and making me look like an asshole. But I also want to say, Marcus Arroyo, if you had this guy the whole time, how did you not do this? Like, how did you not emphasize taking
there is that
shots,
piece, It came up again this week that, and I will die on this hill. This is my hill to die on. Landing spots matter. And they don't just matter a little. They matter a lot. And it matters for guys that excel in a hurry. And it matters for guys that never really get off the ground until they go somewhere else, or they are freed of, the curse of Adam Gase. Right? It goes both ways. There are 2 sides to this coin. So landing spots matter more than a little bit. And it's why we, on our draft live stream, celebrated some picks so highly because we knew that the players' skills and fit with where they were going was damn near perfect, and they were likely to produce at a high level and really, again, show out all of that talent. And there were other times on both sides of the ball where somebody got picked somewhere and we were like, okay, like, I'm not sure that's great. So the fun part is we get to see Justin Herbert operating at the top of his abilities. He is playing, especially for a guy that has 3 or 4 games in, so loose and fast. He looks comfortable and happy. And, you know, we see that play where, again, his line's not great. He picked up an early rush on that touchdown where he rolled out to his right, avoids the rush, just barely, like, brushes the guy's hand off his chest, rolls to the right, throws a dime for a touchdown in the end zone, right on the receiver, right? That is a loose, fast, heady play. And he made it
like
look
5 guys max in the league that can do that, by the way. Like, that was special.
And he made it look easy. Right? When you go back, he doesn't look rushed or flustered or like, you know, his hair's on fire. He kind of says, to the defensive lineman, rolls out and just throws a beautiful ball, right? We knew he was more mobile than a lot of people gave him credit for. He's very tall and lanky, but he runs quite well. Even at that size, we saw that on some long scrambles at Oregon. But the combination of traits to make that play in particular come off, you have to have the mindset on top of that that says, I got it, right? And to have that 3 or 4 games into your NFL career, like, folks, the Chargers have their quarterback. Like, don't need to see any more receipts. The Chargers have their quarterback for the next good long while. And, you know, kudos to them. That is a great thing as a franchise without that, as a fan of a franchise without that for the last, I don't know, half century. Kudos to them. Great choice, and they're in a good place. NFL teams with solid options at quarterback are in a good place. And again, as we talked about at the top of the podcast, if you don't have one, you got to do whatever you can and keep grinding until you get one, because you're not going to get over the hump without one, and the Chargers have one.
How miserable are Broncos fans right now? They got to deal with Mahomes 2 times a year. Potentially, you know, if Herbert is on this same trajectory, they're going to have to deal with his monstrous talent twice a year. You know, the Raiders are a well-oiled machine at this point. Like, God, if I was a Broncos fan, I'd just be depressed because the whole division is just a slaughterhouse.
Yeah, and, you know, I don't want to say that they don't have theirs. We saw some really good things from Drew Lock, and we were hoping that he would, you know, be in there and operating this high-octane offense in Denver. And, again, we get shorted that because of the injury. We hope he comes back strong as well. And, you know, Cortland Sutton goes down with an injury, and you sort of, as a Broncos fan, that's a tough year to endure. But it's even tougher, like you said, when the rest of your division is just surging, right? Obviously, the Chiefs are the Chiefs. You know, a game we're going to talk about very soon with Las Vegas, right? Las Vegas is hitting their stride under Gruden and again, has assembled a good group of playmakers too. And now, you know, Herbert kind of, I don't want to say comes out of nowhere, but I don't think anybody expected him to start this soon. It was very much Tyrod's team. And then we all knew that Herbert would get his shot eventually. He got it right away, and he is ready for prime time right now. So, yeah, it makes it tough.
One more note I want to give on this game is that Joey Bosa is just insane. You know, he had 3 different injuries, if I remember correctly. One of them being a knee, and I think it was like a rib or a hip or, you know, something in his core. But he had 3 injury designations coming into this game. They weren't sure if he was going to play. Ended up only playing 28 snaps. They were kind of on a pinch count with him, so he played mostly just in kind of pass rush situations. So out of his 28 snaps, he had 24 pass rushes. In only 24 pass rushes, he still had 5 pressures and a sack, all on Ryan Ramczyk, who's a top 3 tight end, or not tight end, right tackle at worst in the entire league. Like, he's an elite of the elite tackles. Like, his pressure per snap rate was, I think, second in the NFL last year. So he's about as good as it gets at OT in this league, and Joey played him for half the game and still had a full game's worth of production. Like, and that's on a bad knee. he's just a monster. He's absolutely a monster. He's another guy who I think I probably underestimated. Ironically, also on the Chargers roster, and they've given me a lot of shit over the years for that. But again, he shut me up. He proved me wrong. Like he's not. At the time, I said Joey's a good player. I wasn't sure if he was ever going to be like a Khalil Mack or a J.J. Watt type player. I said, okay, maybe let's hold our horses a little bit before we put him in the Hall of Fame. No, I think he's going to go to the Hall of Fame. I think he's pretty damn good.
I mean, on that Chargers roster, right, one thing they don't usually struggle with is pass rushers, at least not recently, with Bosa on one side, Melvin Ingram on the other. It's one of the best duos in the league. Their interior alignment are not shabby either, and he has put up numbers, right? People say, oh, his younger brother's better. Well, that might be true, but that doesn't mean he's bad. When you look at that as an efficiency rate on a rush, that's nuts.
It's astronomical.
Yeah, it like does not compute is the first thing you're going to see on the calculator when you try and figure that out. So no, Bosa's great. Yeah, it was a great game, but it was Chargers business as usual, right? Had the Saints on the ropes, let them hang around, made some questionable decisions as usual. Got beat in heartbreaking fashion in OT, as usual. Like the Chargers, I think it was Ted Wen, our buddy Ted Wen from The Athletic, who posted the Chargers are like the anti-Seahawks. They do the same thing. They have this sort of cardiac finish, and then they don't deliver.
Yeah,
and
well, it was
he
like
couldn't be more right.
Seahawks have won. Hold on, let me see if I can find the stat. Because like Chargers are like 3-13 in their last one-score games, and the Seahawks are like 12-3. Like it's the polar opposite.
It literally is. It's like the Bizarro Seahawks. They're just the opposite. Speaking of Bizarro Seahawks stats, the Seahawks won that game without converting a third down. What is that? That's
Russell Wilson, baby.
I know, but I can't even wrap my head around that. Like as an NFL stat, like. I have so many questions, like, when's the last time a team ever did that? Has a team ever done that? Does it happen often? Like, it seems like it happens never to me, but that one just blows my mind.
Hey,
so.
It's not a Seahawks game without something that's never happened before happening.
That's true. Did you see the GIF or the little meme floating around that says, being a Seahawks fan isn't stressful at all, and it says, like, Clark, 22 years old, and it's a picture of a guy that's, like, obviously 80. And it's just so true. Like, that I live in the Pacific Northwest, and the talk every Monday is like, I think my heart rate's come back down from yesterday, but I'm not sure. That's pretty typical Monday water cooler talk in the Northwest. So, yeah, time to move on to the Blitz. Many of you in the comments last week noted that our Blitz was like 45 minutes long, so we're either the slowest two white guys or maybe we should change the name. So Roundup is a little generic. We're going to keep it with Blitz for now, but yeah, we are not speedy. We're just speedier than we are when we're talking about full games, so it's all relative, folks. Got to lead off the Blitz with Le'Veon Bell getting released earlier today and being really happy about it, which I cannot blame him for. Getting out,
wouldn't you be?
Getting out from under the auspices of one Adam Gase would be cause for celebration for me. But it got me thinking, where does Le'Veon go, right? There's instant speculation, as there always is. But we've talked about so many running back duos and even trios that are so solid around the league, teams that go three deep with their runners, that the landing spots are a little bit limited. So I came up with 4. The Giants being first as a sort of short-term replacement for Saquon, because he's obviously not coming back this year, and you would give him a little bit of pop. But you brought up the very good point that Le'Veon is probably done with dumpster fires. He's made his money, and he'd like to go to a well-run organization, and that kind of rules out the Giants right now. They're not in that spot. They're certainly not going to contend. A team we talked about earlier, again on the East Coast, the Dolphins, because we talked about Myles Gaskin being good at the top, but Le'Veon brings a different element and would bring a second option for them. And they do have some money, so they could fit him in. Do they need him? No. Would he be a nice add for down the stretch? He would. Staying in the AFC East, the Pats, and you might say, why? why, EJ? Why the Pats? Seems like Bill Belichick has a thing for occasionally taking on, shall we say, projects. He's done it before with high-profile wide receivers who maybe didn't have the best reputation. And he seems to be able to rotate running backs at will. Now, they have a guy that they like who can be their sort of bell cow. Sony Michel got hurt, and, Le'Veon could come in and take some of the Sony Michel snaps if he's willing to be on the Patriots. Hope that Cam comes back strong, maybe end up contending at the end for a wild card spot, something like that. Could be attractive to him. And the other one's a team we just talked about, the Chargers, really depending on Austin Eckler's injury situation and the duration, how long that's going to be, because they've got Joshua Kelly, a talented rookie, but Le'Veon would give them, again, some short-term relief from that. So they're all kind of one-year rental situations. None of these are like take over the starting running back mantle and stay there for the quote-unquote rest of your career. But any others that pop into your mind?
The one that really does for me is the Raiders. I think their style of running suits him. It's a lot of duo, a lot of power, a lot of inside zone, very much a north-south, kind of football team. And I know that Booker's done well as their second running back, but I feel like, again, given the circumstances, you're probably going to get Le'Veon for dirt cheap. I think he just wants to play for a well-run team this year and then figure out the money next year. So I think they could probably get him for basically no money. Come in, kind of spell Jacobs, spell Booker, keep both of them healthy, particularly Jacobs. You really want Jacobs to be, hitting a stride and still going strong in December. When the weather's colder, and he can just kind of grind teams into dust. Like, that's really what he does. So you bring in Le'Veon, give him, 5 to 10 touches a game. He'll be your third down back because he's such a prolific receiver, veteran presence in the locker room. From everything I've heard, he's a great teammate. Is he eccentric sometimes? Yeah. Does he give the media some gruff? Yeah, but as a teammate, I've heard he's really good. So I don't think Gruden would really balk at signing him. And again, just considering what you're going to get for probably very little money, would you rather have Richard or would you rather have Bell as your number 3 running back? Personally, I'd probably rather have Bell.
Yeah, and he expands their receiving options because Booker had a game this week, but he's not anywhere near the receiver that Le'Veon is. So it would give them one more option, and the Raiders have definitely shown more of a propensity to go deep this year and not so much out to the screens, but there are those plays where you got to throw it to the check down. And Le'Veon's a dynamic option on the check down, so why not? I like that addition. So moving into last Thursday, we didn't get a chance to talk about last Thursday, but it was Bucs-Bears, and this is not a game I was looking forward to because the Bucs were really starting to round into form. The defense has been very good all year, and Tom Brady was figuring out the offense and sort of rounding off all those corners. They were marching into Soldier Field on a short week, and I thought, I hope this isn't a long night for the Bears. That's kind of how I was approaching it. It felt like it really could be really quickly, that it could get out of hand. The Bears needed to be perfect to win. They weren't perfect by any stretch, but they still squeaked it out by a point. And it was an amazing game. It was really interesting to feel happy after that game. I was not expecting to. But I think the play that we're going to nominate as the first bootleg shot of the week is Kyle Fuller's hit and resulting fumble, changed the game. Before that, the Bucs were having some success. After that hit, almost none. The defense was energized by that shot. You could hear it. You could see it. Eddie Jackson was mic'd up for this game. That footage is on Game Pass. If you have Game Pass, I'd absolutely recommend you go check that out because it's entertaining, but you can just feel it. The defense felt like, all right, this one's ours now. And the defensive line was tremendous. Mack was a force. He had his sort of coming out games in terms of sacks. He's played very well as a disruptor, as an edge setter against the run. He's played very, very well, but quietly in terms of sack production. He's been powering other people to sacks, but this was the game where he and Akeem Hicks really frustrated Tom Brady. And Terry Bradshaw said it in the lead up to the game. He said, look, if you hit Tommy, you can make him uncomfortable. You can make him look ordinary. And the Bears came out and hit Tom Brady in the mouth a bunch, and he was frustrated. He tossed a tablet on the sidelines. He was jawing with Mac after a particular sack where Mac drew a penalty. You could tell that Tom was off his game a little bit, and the Bears needed something like that because straight up they weren't going to compete. Certainly with the Bucs offense, if you went offense to offense. So the Bears needed to do that and did that throughout the game. What do you see when you watched?
Khalil Mack welcoming Tristan Wirfs to the NFL in very rude fashion.
You mean chucking a 340-pound guy who hang cleans 480 with one arm? I sent that to a friend of mine who is a personal trainer. She's a CrossFitter. She's got her degree in athletic training from UW, so she worked with all the football players when she was there. Very familiar with weightlifting, with athletic performance, with injury recovery, all that. So she's always fascinated. She actually has a former NFLer in her box now. Box being what CrossFitters call a gym. We're not going down the dirty road here. And I showed her the video of Tristan Wirfs hang cleaning 480 before the draft 4 times, and she was like, "Oh my God, like what is that? You just don't see that." And I was like, "You're right, you just don't. He's one of the strongest guys that's ever played at Iowa." And so I sent her the video this week of Khalil Mack like whipping him to the ground with one arm, and her response was 2 words: "Stupid strong." And I was like, "Yep, that's it." It's, Khalil Mack. I will continue to believe that Khalil Mack is a superhero who moonlights as a football player. But that was a fascinating little play.
100%. 100%. And as you said, 4-1 is 4-1 any way you slice it. They're not a pretty team, but
they are not.
They're effective. They're effective. My first point in the blitz is with the Raiders and Chiefs game. I think this kind of validates everything that we were talking about in our pre-draft and our post-draft coverage when it came to the Raiders, which is they know that they cannot hold Patrick Mahomes to less than 30 points. They know it's just not going to happen. So their strategy and their goal is, let's load up on skill position. Let's make sure that our trenches are strong and deep, that we can sustain injuries, which they have this year, and still be good, which they have been this year. That we draft all these rookies like Edwards and Ruggs and just turn every single Raiders-Chiefs game into a track meet. If we can get 1 or 2 stops, that's it. That's all we need, because we can kill clock. We can be efficient. We still have Ruggs that can give us quick strike ability, which he did. But really, it was in the fourth quarter how they were killing clock and extending drives and just not getting off the field with Jacobs and Waller. Renfro even had like 1 big catch for a huge chunk play for them. But that's what the Raiders are this year. We know our defense is shaky, but that's fine because we can just outscore you. Like every single week this week, or every single week this season, it seems like their game plan has been like, okay, we gave Derek as many tools as he's ever had in his career. Like, this is going to be the Derek Carr year where we show that he can be a true franchise quarterback that can pick up this team every single week and not just get into a shootout, but actually win a shootout. And they're actually built for that now. And they beat arguably the best shootout team in the league in a shootout. Like, this was the plan going into the offseason, was we are building to outscore Kansas City and only get 1 or 2 stops that we really need. And they did it. So, hats off to Gruden, hats off to, the front office. This worked. It absolutely worked. And I see what they were doing from the beginning, and I'm so happy that they proved that that they can actually go toe-to-toe with these offensive, powerhouses and actually beat them at their own game.
Yeah, it reminded me of an old AFL game for a while. Just gunning, right?
Yeah.
The way the AFL came to prominence was the NFL had turned it into a grinded-out league and power eye and fullback and 3 yards in a cloud of dust and big hits. And the AFL said, we're going to loosen it up. We're going to run deep routes. We're going to chuck it up. We're going to send 3 or 4 people deep in the passing game. We're going to show people what they haven't seen before. And it really feels like this was an old AFL game, which was super fun to watch. So next game up, Colts-Browns. I wanted to make the note that Baker Mayfield is back to playing some confident football. And we've talked about Kevin Stefanski having a good year so far, and good on Stefanski and his staff for letting us see Baker Mayfield's gifts again. Look, he's going to make some mistakes. He did in the second half, but it's good to see him playing fast and loose, making those confident throws. We talked about it with Justin Herbert. We're seeing a little bit of that from Baker Mayfield, and it's a lot of fun because Baker Mayfield was a fun, very confident, I think that's well-chronicled player in college, and he lost that. He got a little bit timid. He started playing slow mentally because he was thinking too much and not just reacting. And Stefanski and his staff have gotten Baker Mayfield to that point again where he is ready to let it go. And he's at least going to be a guy that's holding up his end, not being the anchor on this Browns offense. And again, we talked about Big Ben being a point guard in that division. Baker Mayfield can be a very fun sort of fast break point guard for the Browns. We're seeing a little bit of it. Again, he's got to eliminate those sort of game-changing mistakes he had at the end. But it's really good to see Baker Mayfield fast and loose again.
Yeah, before I move on to mine, I do want to shout out to Jedrick Wills, who's having a hell of a start to his career. I mean, every time they run behind Jedrick Wills, they're getting yards. He's a phenomenal run blocker, great pass protector. He did give up a sack in this game, but it kind of seemed like he expected Baker's drop to be shallower than it was, and I think he expected the ball to be out, so he didn't really take a really quick kick set. Like, I think he was more kind of short setting and expected the ball to be out, so he just kind of like let the guy go. Didn't really, I think, it wasn't really like him getting beaten. I think it was just kind of a mental error. But overall, like Justin Houston was getting nothing on him. He really wasn't. Like, he had a phenomenal day in pass protection, other than the one mistake, and just a really good season blocking on the ground, all things considered. I think he's he will never win Rookie of the Year, but I think he's been one of the best offensive rookies in the league. Just highly consistent, extremely talented. They definitely got their left tackle in the future. Now, my point...
I'm gonna give you a shout out on that one, because when Jedrick Wills got drafted, or actually before Jedrick Wills got drafted, you said he would be a quote-unquote perfect fit for Kevin Stefanski because Jedrick Wills' biggest strength was Kevin Stefanski's favorite play. You said that before he got drafted, so you're thrilled when he ended up there. We never thought he would end up in Cleveland. He did, but there's your clairvoyant call of the week from Mr. Brett Coleman.
It was either him or Mekhi Becton. It didn't really matter which one they got, as long as they got one of them, because those were my two top-rated tackles, and they both perfectly fit the outside zone run scheme. And I think Becton went before? No, Becton went after. That's right. Andrew Thomas went first, weirdly enough. And then Wills slid down to 10. I remember, they were ecstatic. They never imagined that he was going to be there, so much so that they actually told Jedrick Wills and his agent Nicole Lynn, like, hey, we know he's not going to be there, but if he is, we're going to pick him, so just know you're not getting out of the top 10. And then lo and behold, he was there at 10, and they're like, well, shit, okay, I guess
we gotta.
I guess they're just going to give him to us. And they've loved him ever since the first day he's been in the building, so great pick to get Jedrick Wills there. My next game I want to talk about is Rams and the football team. Still sounds weird to say that, but that's their name, so I'm sticking to it.
Better than what it was.
Kyle Allen, he did get hurt, which I think brought out some mixed feelings, where we're very happy that Alex Smith, made it back to playing football. He took his first snaps as a pro since that horrific leg injury a couple of years ago. And it's been one of the best stories in sports, but at the same time, we're like, okay, get back on the bench and don't get hurt again, please, for the love of God, because we can't stomach you getting hurt again. He clearly was a little bit rusty out there, not gonna lie. And every time he got hit, I don't know about you, every time he got hit, I puckered a little bit, because I'm like, oh God, please don't burst into a fine mist right now on my television.
I read something that really sort of summed it up perfectly for me, is that it's okay to feel both ways about this. You can be extremely, whatever it is, moved, happy, proud, amazed at his process through recovery, the fact that he can even walk again, the fact that he made an NFL football field is ridiculous. You can be thrilled, ecstatic, whatever you want, have any, whatever positive emotion you want. You can also be extremely worried for his safety and feel a little bit queasy or uneasy about the fact that he is out there getting thrashed by 330 pounders, right? It is ultimately Alex Smith's decision. Nobody's forcing him into this. These are not gladiator games, right? But it is okay to feel both ways about this situation. And I'm like you. I was like, it's amazing. I wish that there had been a full stadium of fans, you know, again, not with the COVID risk, but wouldn't it have been amazing for Alex? That would have been like the hair on the back of your arm standing up moment of the year. Alex Smith takes the field again. The Washington crowd rises to its feet and just says, we appreciate what you've done to get here. And like you said, please get back to the bench as quickly as possible and stop getting hit by these people that are trying to kill you, because it was rough, right? He took a bunch of hits, and we're going to talk about that as well. Like these are two of the best defensive lines in the league, and it was tough to see him out there just kind of folding down after down and be like, oh, please, not this time. Oh, please, not this time. So I think that's always going to be part of it, because I'm not sure he's completely back, right? He doesn't walk without a limp, and it seems very odd to be playing football at the highest level without walking without a limp. But again, it's his choice, and you can feel both ways about this, and I guess that's okay, right? But it's a valid feeling for sure, and we both experienced it.
Speaking of monster hits, by the way, I'm nominating Montez Sweat for Big Shot of the Week, because I'm not going to lie, for like a half second, I thought Jared Goff died on the field. He got obliterated by Montez Sweat when they tried to block him with Tyler Higbee, which, can we stop trying to block 270-pound defensive ends with tight ends? Can we just like make that a rule where you just don't do that? Because it never ends well. And Jared Goff got lit up by Montez Sweat.
To be fair, this is the hit that spawned this segment. Brett accused me of coming up with this segment after Kyle Fuller's hit. And honestly, Fuller's hit is great. It's nominated. It's worthy. But I didn't think of this segment before that. When I was watching the game recap going through Rams-Washington, I saw this hit from Montez Sweat, and it's one of those that it's an old school sack, right? This is not a new sack rules sack. He basically goes airborne in the Christ pose and massacres Jared Goff. He crushes him into dust. And it reminded me of Lawrence Taylor. This is the kind of hit that Lawrence Taylor used to have, coming free around the end and just flattening quarterbacks, putting his arms out and just hitting guys with his chest and just knocking them silly. And Montez Sweat got around the corner quick and brought everything to bear on Jared Goff. And it was legal and awesome and scary all at the same time. So a worthy nomination for Bootleg Shot of the Week. And he also ran down Cam Akers late in the game.
I was going to mention, like, you saw the 4.4 speed on that rundown of Akers on the 40, it was like 43-yard run.
Such great hustle.
Akers is pretty fast himself, and he's going down the edge.
Yeah.
And you see just this giant, like, Terminator running full speed after him down the sideline. And I'm like, what the hell is that?
Yeah, that's a Montez Sweat. Is that
like
Montez
a roided up
music?
Gazelle just going in for the kill.
Nails him. So Montez Sweat had I don't want to say a coming out game, because he's had quite a few games where he's put up some very nice plays, but the two of those sort of contrasting plays shows you just what kind of alien athletes are playing in the NFL, that a guy can be 265, 270 and run down a running back who is probably top 4 running back in this class. I'd say that pretty easily. Insane. So yeah, again, two of the most talented defensive lines in the league assembled on one field, and they showed it. They both went to town. The Rams defensive line had their way with the Washington offensive line, and vice versa. Washington defensive line we've talked about as sort of killers and game enders all year, and they didn't they didn't spare the horses going the other way either. Jared Goff took his share of hits as well. So if you love D-line play, this is the one you need to go back and watch because it was full of it.
Who do you got for Dolphins 49ers?
Dolphins 49ers, I wanted to bring up Raheem Mostert, right? He just keeps making those big chunk plays, and we talked about him being a very solid fit in the Shanahan offense and the fact that he was going to do that. But what I saw from him this week that just reminded me that he's more than just that is he ran with some power, too. He busted up some guys on some inside runs. And that's not his game. He's not Derrick Henry. That's not his strength. But to see that in addition to the fact that, look, if you give him an alley on off tackle or outside zone, he can be gone. We've seen it almost every week of the year. But the fact that he was running with power too was illuminating. And so Mr. Mostert gets his call out. Fitzmagic is just a fearless dude. And I'm not just talking about his fashion. He'll chuck it up. He'll scramble. He'll do what he needs to do to help the Dolphins win. And is he the best option? No, he's not. But is he a really entertaining bridge to Tua? And a guy that his teammates obviously play very hard for and just don't quit on? He is, and he deserves the call out, right? He is not the greatest of all time in probably any category except for maybe Ivy League quarterbacks in the NFL, but he might even have some competition there if you go back in history. He's just a ton of fun. So big ups to Fitzmagic for being entertaining and for giving the Dolphins a chance every week. And the crazy thing is, if I told you Miami was going to hang 30 on San Francisco, you would have thought that was a really good game out of the Dolphins offense. If I told you they'd do it in a half, you would have called me nuts. You'd have been like, no way Miami hangs 30 on the Niners in a half. Like, I wouldn't even wanted to see the return on that.
To be fair, I don't think anybody fully expected Brian Allen to be the worst football player to ever grace a field. Because, oh my God, he got absolutely obliterated.
Yeah, and they went after him too. And NFL teams are pretty ruthless that way. When somebody's, again, I talked to it earlier in the podcast, when somebody's showing that they can't do something, we were talking about the Philadelphia safeties and not really being able to make a choice on a deep route. Look, it's a copycat league. Everybody's going to take the easy yards, right? Wins in the NFL are tough to come by, and if you show them that there's an easy button, they're going to press it until it wears out. And, yeah, Brian Allen got taken advantage of pretty hard, really hard, very hard.
124
hard.
yards in the first half. That's like Nate Gary's been awful this year. That's half of all the yards Nate Gary's given up the entire season, who's one of the worst coverage linebackers in the league, and that was in a half.
In a half, yeah. Not a good look. The Miami kicker, Sanders, was incredible. He just kept putting up points. When they didn't get a touchdown, they got a field goal from him. He was money all day long. And this one's going to be fun. It's going to generate a little conversation, but it came to me watching that game and watching the highlights. I thought, San Francisco, obviously really rough at quarterback right now. They've used all three of the quarterbacks on their roster. Jimmy G is looking terrible, I guess, is a fair way to say it.
Yeah.
Beathard, not ever really going to be the long-term option. Certainly didn't show anything this game that would make you think he was. They've had some success with Nick Mullins, but Matt Ryan, we're going to talk about a game in a second. Matt Ryan might be available, right? They might have a fire sale in Atlanta. They might just say, burn it all down. We fired our coach. We got rid of our GM. All of our assets are up for sale. Matt Ryan doesn't really have any business being on Atlanta anymore. They're going to go into a full rebuild with a completely new power structure at the top of their organization. He's 35 years old, I think. And
somewhere
he's got
in the
a
30s.
contract. Yeah, he's got a contract coming up that's going to expire here, if not this year, then in the next couple of years. He doesn't have any business being on a rebuilding team. It's not going to help anybody in that equation. So my thought went to short-term rental for San Francisco. Like, I'd like to see him pulling the trigger in that offense. I dug into it a little bit deeper, and the dead cap is atomic. It's ridiculous. It's like $50 million or something.
Wait,
his
really?
dead cap number. No, I just don't remember the number, but it was extremely high. So it's
like,
highly prohibitive. Let's put it that way. No, 50 million is not an exact number. So it's probably not going to happen just because of the money, but more theoretically, like Matt Ryan to San Francisco, thoughts?
If they can do it by also packaging like a pick with Jimmy G, be like, okay, you guys take Jimmy, he's your quote unquote bridge quarterback while you rebuild, and he only has like a couple years left on his deal or whatever, and I don't even think it's guaranteed. And so you just kind of throw that in there just to kind of make financial room while you throw a pick at them for Matt. I could see it. But at the same time, the Falcons would probably ask more than what the 49ers are willing to give. I would gotta think. 'Cause, again, for an older quarterback. Unless they
it's
think
an older
like
quarterback,
they,
but his deal's almost like, again, he's got no more than another year worth of control, and the Falcons know where they're going, right? So if they could free themselves of the salary ramifications, again, dead cap being a killer for Atlanta, which is probably going to keep him around, which is unfortunate because it's not a great situation for either side at this point. I just thought, man, wouldn't it be fun to see Shanahan with a guy that really knows what he's doing, operating a sort of high-volume passing attack, distributing it to all the different weapons in San Francisco. And it's not like San Francisco is really made on quarterback skills that Ryan doesn't have, right? They don't need a guy that runs a 4 or 5 and, can make 3 first downs with his legs every game. Jimmy can't do that. So it would be really interesting to see a sort of high-level distributor of the football with all those weapons, so those different and sort of varied weapons in San Francisco. So that was my flight of fancy. We don't have to go any farther down that rabbit hole, but it was fun while it lasted.
I will say with Bengals Ravens, I'll keep this one short because it was an absolute slaughter. Lamar to Mark Andrews is a problem. It's going to be a problem for many, many years. And I know that the Ravens passing game has been kind of up and down this season. But when Lamar is working the middle of the field and he's got Andrews actually catching the ball, there were a couple key drops against Kansas City. But when Mark Andrews actually catches the ball, that is an unstoppable duo because he gets open almost at will. And not to mention, Lamar is a much more accurate passer. Every single year, it seems like he gets better as a passer, in my opinion. But like that to me is like equivalent to Mahomes and Kelsey. It's equivalent to the good version of Jimmy and Kittle, where like when Andrews is on and when Lamar is on, like there's nothing you could do about it. Like that duo is just money. He beats up linebackers, he beats up safeties, he beats up corners. Like nobody can cover the dude. Nobody can cover him. And Lamar, again, when he's dialed in, avoiding the rush and making good throws on the run, like it's to me one of probably the 5 or 6 most deadly quarterback to receiver connections in the league.
Yeah, it's dialed. It's a weekly feature you should get used to because we've seen it almost every week this year. He did have that one down week where he got drops right after we sung his praises. So again, maybe we jinxed him, but he came right back and started making big catches. Had more this week. You're going to see that for a long time. If they keep both of those players locked up in Baltimore, you're going to see that connection over and over and over again. So Panthers-Falcons will forever be the game that cleaned Atlanta's GM/coaching house. Atlanta famously after the game got rid of both Dimitroff and Dan Quinn. It was a divisional loss on top of looking bad doing it. It was just too much after the previous couple of weeks. Their sort of death warrant was already signed, not necessarily sealed, but there was very little hope, I think, of anybody doing anything in Atlanta that was going to change minds substantively. It was a question of when, not if. This turned out to be the week. Mike Davis on the Panther side is looking really, really good. Did we talk about him last week? Because I had a note, and I don't know if we got to it.
We might have.
I just said there was something about what I wanted to say, if I didn't say it last week, was the note was there's just something about Mike Davis playing in the Carolinas, right? He played there really well in college. He was okay when he came out in his previous couple of stops. He was all right for the Bears. This year, he looks different. He looks really, really good and explosive. he is powering that offense in a way that I think very few people would have predicted in the absence of CMC, who went down with an injury early. He's a problem, and that Panthers team is going to be a problem. We talked about them last week being a mid-pack team that's sort of ascending. I think we probably expected them in a certain way to beat the Falcons, but they did, and handily. They are the Bears' next opponent, so I'm very interested in that, and they are not going to be an easy out. They've got that defensive pass rushing line. We've talked about Jeremy Chin. They've got a bunch of options working on offense. Teddy throwing to, again, more Gase castoffs. Robbie Anderson, Mike Davis, DJ Moore had a big catch and run for a touchdown. They're not going to be an easy out. So Falcons kind of have an uncharted course ahead of them. They got to sort of play out the string. The Panthers, on the other hand, are, new first-year head coach, new quarterback signed up that should be there for a few years, and are playing well more quickly than most people thought. So Panthers fans have some hope, which is awesome.
Yeah. Also, by the way, Yetur Gross-Matos, Derek Brown, Brian Burns, a trio are, I think, the next kind of big thing in terms of young defensive lines in the league. All three of them are having a phenomenal start to the year. Burns had a great year last year, his rookie year. Really turned it up even another notch this year. I think going into this week, if you're a believer in PFF grades, some are, some aren't. I kind of take them with a grain of salt, but just kind of based on my cursory film study, I don't totally disagree. Yetur Gross-Matos and Brian Burns were both top 5 graded edge rushers going into week 5. And that's even with Gross-Matos being on limited snaps. Like his pressure per snap was somewhere between 6 and 7. So he get a pressure every 6 or 7 rush attempts, which is really, really, really good. That's like top 10 to 15, type expectations. Same for Brian Burns. Derek Brown just mauling every single center and guard that dares even look at him. This young D-line, they got problems on the back end, but the young D-line, oof. Man, they're legit.
Yeah, absolutely, for real.
And now, moving on to my team, the Texans, finally getting their first win of the year over the... I don't even know what to really think of the Jags at this point because they're so painfully inconsistent. They'll take a team to the wire, they'll put up 30 points and then they'll come out flat the next week. And, James Robinson will look great one week and then get absolutely stonewalled the next. Gardner's been up and down. I honestly have no idea what to make of the Jaguars at this point. I know they've had some key injuries, but everybody's had some key injuries. You're 5 weeks into the NFL season. Everybody's hurt. And the Jags I don't know what they are.
For what it's worth, they are my top don't bet on them team. I don't bet regularly, but if I had money, I would not be betting on the Jaguars because I'm with you. I'm kind of doing the shrug thing going, I don't know. They looked amazing last week. They looked like garbage the week before. They've had, I think, more success than certainly I thought they were going to have, and they've looked better. Their skill positions are pretty good, but their consistency is scary.
This could be a 4-win team or it could be a 9-win team, and I would believe you either way. I legitimately don't know what they are. What I do know, Deshaun Watson, still a magician, still able to escape sacks at will, make throws on the run. He is still the slipperiest quarterback in the league. Is he the most powerful at breaking tackles? No. Is he the fastest like Lamar? No. But in terms of just absolutely getting out of defenders that have him already wrapped up, it's like the Eli to Tyree throw in the Super Bowl. That happens once a game. It's insane with him how adept he is at getting out of guys that already have him in the grasp. I don't know how he does it. He's
magic.
He's freaking Gumby, man.
Magic is the perfect description because as I watch that, I'm always like, the scary part is I expect it now.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, no, he's not going down. Where 9 out of other 10 quarterbacks, I'd be like, oh, yeah, Watson, I'm like, nah, he's got at least one more of those on this play. He's just going to hop out of another one. And he does. The reason is because he does every time. It's regular. Like you said, it's not a once in every 3 games, oh, my God, it's every game he does some kind of crazy limbo in the backfield, pops out, goes left, goes right, ducks under a guy, stands up and throws for, first down or touchdown. It's so, you could set your watch to it.
He's the hardest guy to sack in the league. Not because he gets the ball out quick, not because he's, like Brady or Manning where you're just not getting there to begin with. He's the hardest guy to sack in the league, even when you have him dead to rights. Like, it's insane. And I also want to nominate another, speaking of sacks, another hit for shot of the week. Jacob Martin coming up from behind Minshew and kind of karate chopping that ball out while just absolutely destroying him from behind. Again, legal hit, but forcing that fumble in a huge spot, coming up with a big play for a defense that was historically bad going into week 5 and actually, kind of helping this defense have its first good performance all season long. Big ups to Jacob Martin. He's definitely also nominated for shot of the week.
Yeah, that one was one I was watching, and I was like, get rid of it, get rid of it. Just talking to Minshew on the TV like he could hear me, right? Like, no. Oh, man. Because Jacob Martin, that was just a blast. Like, that was a high impact hit, and I'm not at all surprised that Minshew let it go because I'm not sure anybody could hold on to the ball getting hit that hard at that angle. Like, Martin just unloaded on him. So another worthy entry for bootleg shot of the week for sure. So Vikings Hawks, we need to talk about it. We've talked a lot about both of these teams, so we'll keep it short, but I saw your post on Twitter, so I had to lead with this. KJ Wright, wide receiver candidate?
Oh, that one-handed stab. And again, you watch KJ move around, he's kind of stiff. Like, he's not as fast as he used to be. But the dude's got go-go gadget arms. And when he drops into his zone, if you try to throw it over him, again, I don't want to say he's like deceptively big, but he kind of is. Where like he'll get up there.
Deceptively long.
Yes.
Right?
And he'll just kind of reach up there and palm that thing and like a power forward. And it's like, what the hell, KJ? Like, where did that come from?
At least throw him some of those New England linebackers at tight end to the flats for TD routes, right? That's a patented Bill Belichick staple. I feel like KJ could excel in that role, but on to more serious matters. Russell Wilson, as we all know, is relentlessly positive, much to a sort of cloying degree for a lot of people, but he backs it up. It's ridiculous. He's in crappy conditions. It was raining like crazy on Sunday. Almost no time left, about 44 seconds. Decent rush coming equals a dime into a tight window to win the game, of course, because it's Russell Wilson. And he was saying it the whole time, which, look, a lot of quarterbacks say it, but they don't do that with the regularity that Russell does. He's on the sideline. Come on, guys, let's win the game. We're going to win this game. No, we're going to win this game. Let's go win this game, right? He always is like that. That's who Russell Wilson is. It's not an act anymore. He's just always like that. But he goes out and he throws a dime to DK to win the game, to bring everybody in the Northwest blood pressure back down. It's just unbelievable. It's kind of like Deshaun avoiding sacks, right? You just expect Russell Wilson to win the game at the end. You're actually kind of surprised when he doesn't at this point.
I remember seeing statistically they had the Vikings had a 96% chance to win when they were on that 4th and 1. And if they converted it, obviously it'd be a 100% chance to win, the game would be over. If they missed it, they still had a 79% chance to win, which means at the time that they got stuffed, the Seahawks only had a 21% chance to win. And I remember seeing that in real time, that tweeted out, like I think it was 1 or 2 plays into the Seahawks drive. Somehow they already calculated that, but I was like, whatever, I'm just going to trust the math on that. And I remember seeing that tweeted out, and I was like, 21% chance to win. It's Russell Wilson inside of 2 minutes. Like, this game's over. Like, Seattle already won.
That's way too much time. That's way too many percentage points.
Like, it was 4th and 10. I was like, this is going to be a touchdown. And it wasn't, but it was still like a huge play to DK on 4th and 10. I was like, because of course it was. Like, it's Russell. Like, 21%. What? Who? What? No.
Yeah. Who left him this many percentage points? What are you doing?
That's
yeah.
It's guaranteed.
It's amazing that we consider it that way, but he has made that non-routine play so routine that we're just used to it at this point. I know you've got a shout out to Travis Homer for an unorthodox bootleg shot of the week.
Yeah, on that 4th and 10, by the way, which we just knew was going to get converted. If you go back and watch it, Travis Homer was on scan protection, and you saw the DB coming off the edge on a blitz, kind of hustled on over there and sold out his body. I mean, he got absolutely obliterated in the process. He was the one who took the shot, but he took it for Russell. You know, it was like a Secret Service jumping in front of the bullet moment. But it gave Russell just enough time to unload that ball to DK on 4th and 10, keep the drive moving, and eventually, obviously, they scored and won the game. But Travis Homer, you know, taking that shot for Russell was what, in my opinion, beyond Russell himself, was what won Seattle that game. So I want to give a shout out to Travis Homer, nominate him for shot of the week for taking a shot, not giving one, but taking a shot for his quarterback.
I love it. I think it's great. And his teammate, DJ Dallas, one of the highlights I pulled from DJ Dallas's college career that I threw on Twitter during the draft process is exactly the same thing. It's him stepping up sort of into the cone of the pocket and realizing that there was a free rusher on the left-hand side and sort of doing the old torpedo defense and going over and like spearing this guy off just far enough that gave his QB, again, half a window to throw. And, you know, you gotta love running backs who sell it, who see it, who sell it, and are quick enough to get that done. So, yeah, I think it's absolutely a worthy addition to the shot of the week nominees. So you watched Bills Titans. I didn't get a chance to because I was prepping for the podcast. But what do you think of the Titans just steamrolling a team that's been great this year, not just good?
Turnovers, man. It's all about turnovers, you know, with two really good teams in the AFC. I will say the Bills seem to kind of come out a little bit flat, and Sean McDermott kind of alluded that he was a little bit upset with the scheduling of this game on a Tuesday night. He says he's not going to like formally complain, but there's been some rumblings in the Buffalo media that the team was upset that the schedule was thrown off.
I'm going to tell all the media, I'm not formally going to write it up and send it to the league office. So I'm not going to formally complain. I'm just going to complain to millions of people who read this.
He made his displeasure known about the scheduling for this game. But I will say the Titans also still had to play on a Tuesday too, and they didn't come out flat. They barely practiced for 2.5 weeks. They didn't come out flat. They came out with their hair on fire, played a damn good football team, forced 3 turnovers, took advantage of the Bills' deficiency at corner other than Trey White. Derrick Henry, it was kind of a tough slog for him, but he still got it done in the end. Ryan Tannehill looked great. Titans looked damn good. And that was, again, barely practicing for 2 or 3 weeks. Like, you kind of have no excuse to come out flat against a team that couldn't even practice. And the Bills came out flat. So I think this was a game that was really not great for anybody on the Buffalo side, truth be told. But especially so for Allen and the coaching staff, because this was a game that, in my opinion, you have the advantage. You should take advantage of this and win in this scenario. I know the schedule was thrown off. I know it's a Tuesday night. I know it's weird. I'll give you that. It's weird. But it was weird for the other team too, and they kicked your ass. So credit to the Titans. Credit to Vrabel, because he's a hell of a coach. And I will say this. You kind of made a good point. Let's not paint the Titans as victims of circumstance, because they created the circumstance. They kind of brought out a lot of their own troubles in terms of the spread of COVID in their facilities. So they kind of created this whole mess, but at the same time, credit to them for overcoming their own problems. Is that the best way to word it? But they're not victims, but also good on them for overcoming it. I'm not really sure the best way to say it, but I think
again, it's both things can be true. Look, the Titans caused this, right? They clearly caused this. They violated the protocols. They gathered for an unauthorized practice. They ended up having a COVID outbreak, which is terribly unfortunate for them, for everybody around them, for all the staff members that got it. There were quite a few of those. It's not a good situation. COVID, as we all know, is a serious health thing. So that is not great. And yes, they caused it. And, the NFL I don't want to say in their wisdom. I want to say the NFL, in the end, decided to reschedule this game. Again, both teams knew on sort of the same notice, short or not, that it was going to be played on a weird night, on a sort of weird amount of rest or whatever you want to call it, for as much as you might not like to consider it. NFL players maybe not be superstitious, but they're definitely stitious. They like their routine. They like their regularity. This was most definitely a throw-off. We mentioned at the top of the show that the last Tuesday night game was in 2010, and the last time before that was 1946, I think. So, the second Tuesday night game in a long, long time. I get it that it's strange, but
do you remember the circumstances for the 2010 game? Because I don't.
Blizzard, I believe.
Is that what it was? Okay.
Yep. Anyways, look, the Titans rallied. Everybody had the same circumstances, and they didn't just squeak by with a win against the Bills. They obliterated them. This game was not in doubt at any point, right? From halfway through the first quarter to the end of the game, you knew who was winning this game. And again, the Bills have not been good this year. They've been great. They've had some tight games, but as a team, performing on both offense and defense, they have been at or near the top of the league. They're an exciting team. They're an ascending team, and the Titans just blew them up. It wasn't close. So, you can say great job on the Titans to end up coming to a weird game and playing very, very well. That's true. Also, geez, Titans, tighten it up. Don't do this again. It was really stupid, dangerous. The league is extremely pissed at you. People were bandying about the death penalty for your season and saying you just forfeit everything. You're done as of right now because you did something that was really dangerous and endangered a lot of people. I think that was a little bit harsh, but having them forfeit the games they missed until they could field a competent team seemed reasonable. It's not a small thing, but the NFL made the decision they made, and credit the Titans and Mike Vrabel especially for rallying his folks and saying, all right, it is what it is. We made our own bed. We're going to lie in it. We're going to make the best of it. And boy, did they. They come out and just crush Buffalo on a Tuesday.
Yeah, 100%. So again, credit to the Titans. Bills, you got work to do. And with that, EJ, we've been going for almost 2 hours now. This is the longest bootleg episode we've had in a while. Clearly, we're not great at this whole blitzing the blitz thing, but we're trying. We're trying. I hope that we still have somebody listening at this point. 2 hours into this thing. Let us know if you are. By the way, comment down in the comments if you actually listen all the way through on these super long episodes, or if you kind of want us to tighten it up a little bit. No pun intended. But before we get out of here, EJ, what are you working on?
Not much. This was it for the week. I've got a Bears Over Beers coming out on Thursday, really just profiling the Panthers as the next opponent for the Bears. But other than that, lots of work for me this week, so very little football besides this. What do you got going on?
I'm working on a film room. I think it's going to end up being on the Browns running game, and I think I'm going to wait until after they play Pittsburgh, because having back-to-back games against the Colts and the Steelers, two of the best run defenses in the league, going against arguably the best run game in the league, very much a strength versus strength type matchup. So I've done a lot of film study on, when they ripped apart Dallas, and they ran pretty well in the Colts, all things considered, even though Wyatt Teller got hurt. I really want to see how they do against Pittsburgh, because this is literally the highest graded offensive line in terms of adjusted line yards in the league versus the highest graded defensive line in terms of adjusted line yards allowed in the league. So it's literally a best on best situation. So working on that film room for the Browns versus Steelers, on top of all the other layers to that game that I'm sure will be talked about ad nauseum leading up to it. But other than that, not really working on much. And I'm looking forward to all the games this weekend. And I'm happy that you guys were able to stick through this whole episode. I know it's a long one. We'll try to get them shorter, I guess, if that's what you want. But there's a lot of football to talk about. And the more we can talk about in these episodes, the less we have to bring up at the point after next week. So, again, thank you to everybody for listening all the way through this behemoth of a show. We will see you guys next week for the Week 6 recap. And until then, see you later.
Take care, folks.